Hey, let's get the views of Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Good morning, Isabel.
Good morning.
Nigel Farage really looked like the cat that got the cream yesterday. Why is he so happy about this defection, do you think? Why is it more significant than some of the others?
Well, because quite simply, Robert Jenrick was the standard bearer for the right within his former, rapidly diminishing and weakening party. He was really the last hope of the right within that Conservative parliamentary party, and also for the grassroots Conservatives. Who have they now got left to put their right of centre policy agenda hopes in? There isn't going to be anyone. So it's knocking a huge hole in what was already a pretty shaky edifice. You know, the crumbling edifice of the Tory party now looks more like a smouldering ruin. So it is a huge development, and I think for all of us that are political observers, the implications of this are really only just beginning to sink in. They're pretty seismic.
They most definitely are. Interesting tone struck by the Daily Mail today, Isabel. Stop fighting each other and end the Labour nightmare. Britain's economy is moribund, our borders are broken, our armed forces badly depleted in a world of peril. And our PM is an ocean-going socialist dud. As Jenrick's defection rocks the right, the Daily Mail urges the Reform and the Tories to work together to kiss and to make up. I think that's wide of the mark, isn't it? I'm not sure that Reform UK need the Tories anymore.
I thought it was a strange headline, but absolutely in keeping for a paper that has heavy vested interests in remaining the party of the paper of the Tory party. You know, the Daily Mail has long been the champion of the Conservative Party, and that is quite hard to give up. And so what they're trying to do here is come up with a kind of fudge that allows them to continue in that manner. But the reality is that what Nigel Farage is trying to do is kill the Conservative Party. He's not interested in, as they put it, stopping fighting the Conservative Party. They are two very different parties. And if they weren't very different, there wouldn't be any need for reform. You know, reform has evolved because there isn't a true right-wing party in Britain, a credible right-wing political force, or there wasn't before reform evolved out of its previous incarnations as the Brexit Party, and if you go further back, some remnants of UKIP. So that's why it's there. It's not like there's some kind of petty squabbles between people who think roughly the same thing. No, the Tory leadership does not think in the way that Reform thinks, and that is why Jenrick's left it.
What are the criterion by which Conservatives will be recruited into the Reform fold? Because, of course, there is that fear of becoming Tories 2.0.
Well, it certainly wouldn't be for me to lay out the criterion, but I think that first of all, you've got to be ideologically where Nigel Farage and the Reform Party leadership is. So it's no good if you are, you've been busy campaigning to go back into the EU, or if you've been soft on immigration, that would be obviously a deal breaker. I think the way that Nigel Farage will look at this now is he's got to build a shadow cabinet. That is where this goes next. That's what he said at the press conference yesterday. He said he will be announcing jobs in coming weeks, and he wants to look like the official opposition, which of course Reform isn't. The Conservatives are the official opposition. They may be much diminished, but that is their role. It's Kemi Badenoch who gets to stand up every week in Prime Minister's questions. It's Kemi Badenoch that gets all the privileges that go with being the official leader of the opposition. I don't mean trappings of power. What I mean is you get access to intelligence, you get special briefings and so on. So they are still the official opposition. Reform currently has 6 MPs. And Nigel Farage is what he's trying to do, whilst killing off the Conservative Party as a whole. He also has to think up, how does he build up his parliamentary presence and his credibility as a government in waiting? And that is a big task.
Most definitely. What about the internal politics of Reform UK? You've got some big personalities there, some very ambitious people, including Richard Tice, Zia Youssef, and now Robert Jenrick. Is it going to be rats fighting in a sack?
Well, I certainly hope not. Rats that fight in a sack aren't probably going to get out of that sack and be in charge of the country, are they? I think that it's a big adjustment for everybody in Reform that has been used to being an insurgent party on the outside of things. That is Nigel Farage's whole history. It's been as an outsider in politics to actually potentially being the next government of Great Britain. That is a huge adjustment, and going from a very small operation, cast back 3 years, Reform was only 2 or 3 volunteers around a kitchen table, of which I was sort of one of them. And David Bull and Nigel never left it, even though he was took some time out, as he describes it. He was always still there. And now it's this unbelievably enormous and growing force. And that is a big adjustment for everybody who has been on the long journey.
Nigel Farage has set a May deadline, May the 7th, for defections. Has that move surprised you, Isabel?
It hasn't, because there was a backlash. I think we can all, we saw it on Talk, didn't we, with the callers that we got coming in, saying that they were not too happy about the Nadeem Zahawi thing. There is there's a sense amongst some Reform supporters that they really do not want Reform to become just a new version of the Tories. And I think Nigel Farage is very sensitive to that. And that has been such a difficult balance as he tries to do what I described, which is build up a credible government in waiting. And to do that, you can't have it purely from outsiders. That's just not going to work, because you do need government experience. I mean, even just becoming an MP is an absolute labyrinthine, Byzantine, extraordinary thing to navigate. So imagine you've got a new Reform government, and it's made up of people that have not only never been MPs, they've never, of course, had any experience of dealing with the civil service. So there is an absolute balance there, and I think Nigel recognises it can't just be constant defections of people that aren't actually aligned to Reform's values, but just see that they want to hold on to their seats.
If Tuesday's Labour defection, long heralded, is not a sitting Labour MP, that's a nothing burger, isn't it, Isabel?
I actually don't know anything about that defection. I haven't asked the question, and sometimes I prefer not to know, because then no one can say that yes, I've leaked something. I don't know who it is, and Nigel will keep that so tight. He doesn't actually tell people around him, and very wisely so. It's just too easy for this stuff to come out.
Yeah.
And if it comes out, it can be totally kibosh.
Is it appropriate for anyone that's been under the Labour banner to join Reform UK?
Well, there are a number of solid Labour MPs in northern seats in particular who are horrified by what's happening to their communities, and privately are quite aligned with some of what, or even most of what, Reform believes. It's not that unnatural an alignment for some of those particular tougher communities in the north.
Isabel, great to see you. We'll catch up very soon. My thanks to Isabel Oakeshott, one of the best connected journalists in the country and Talk's international editor. So much more to come at